The following program is produced by students of the Brian Lamb School of Communication at Purdue University.
On this week's edition of Fast Track, we'll take a deeper look as to how Purdue's Department of Ground and Sanitation keep up with the continuous snowfall.
We'll discuss the health risks college students may run into in being outside in the cold weather and what they can do to prevent illness.
We'll also give you the details on a campus store that not only has a surplus of miscellaneous items, but may also save you money. Welcome back to Fast Track. We are bringing you this week's show from Purdue Stewart Center. I'm John Rawlings.
And I'm Alexandra Johnson. Working hard to remove snow from the streets is no easy job, and with the constant snow and cold weather, one may wonder how the Department of Grounds and Sanitation is able to keep up. Gino Recchia has more on the story.
In the midst of a record snowfall season, there's a group of employees that have been working many hours and strive at keeping our roads and sidewalks clean here on campus. I'm outside the Ground and Sanitation Department, where much of the planning takes place in order to attack any winter weather that might be heading our way. The facility houses numerous snow removal equipment required for the area that the department has to cover.
We've got about 21 plows on various size trucks, everything from our large street trucks down to 3/4 ton pickups. We also have those plows equipped with sanders. So we have 10 sanders out there, ranging from 1.5 yard to 3.5 yard sanders.
Rick Wiederhaft, an employee at Purdue, has been working as a snowplow driver for the past 5 years and explains the snow removal process.
Once it stops snowing, we'll go through. The only reason, and the stuff we're putting down now, we're going back and plowing it off basically. But we got to do it for safety reasons. Once we get done with the snow falling, we'll go back and plow it curb to curb, which usually is of a night, and then we'll put down, we'll sand all the intersections and hills good. If the streets are slick, we'll put it on them too, but we usually like to wait till daytime.
Another issue the department faces is the threat of falling ice from buildings around campus.
Ice is an issue that we've had to deal with. There are certain designs to some of the roofs on campus that lend themselves, and the way the buildings are positioned with shade and at a certain time when the temperature gets to just the right number, we'll have a couple of days where icicles form and ice slides off of the rooftops. And so in grounds, our goal is to make the area safe. And so we'll post barricades and signs. We'll work with the building deputies.
While the campus may seem relatively small, there certainly are a lot of miles that the department covers.
Well, we have over 30 miles of roads and service drives. We have around 81 miles of sidewalks, and we have surface area for parking for 13,000 vehicles.
Rick mentioned that the best time to work on the roads is at night as far as cleaning goes because the roads are less congested. The only problem is that it is harder to see at night.
This is kind of hairy because you can't see the side of the roads, and if you drop off, it's not pretty.
While salting the roads after a weather event helps, it's also important to pre-treat the roads as well. Purdue developed and won an award for the brine system.
Two of our crew chiefs, Mark Fell and Wyatt Carmody, felt like they could build a system from scratch. So with the support of our administration, it was due to those two's creativity that we're able to put that system together for a little bit over $2,000.
While the season has been relentless so far, a break in the winter weather is allowing a much-deserved rest for the crews in the department. Reporting for Fast Track, I'm Gino Recchia.
Many people in today's society don't delineate themselves as being a part of a specific group or demographic. When filling out legal documents, however, one must define his or herself as being of a particular gender and race. There are various non-conforming students on Purdue's campus, but is Purdue doing all it can to accommodate these individuals? Mackenzie Carney has more.
Many people are unaware of the difference between gender and sex. Gender communication professor Ralph Webb teaches his students why these words are not interchangeable.
Gender is a social construct. It's something that our society has constructed or has allowed us to construct, and it's largely psychological. It has very little to do with biological forces, which are related to sex. So gender is a social construct.
Many gender nonconforming students face challenges here at Purdue. These individuals can find support on campus through the LGBTQ Center or Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, and Queer Center.
The most challenging things that trans and gender nonconforming students deal with on a really daily basis is restrooms. I know there was recently like an Exponent article that came out about this, but you're legally obligated to use the restroom that is in alignment with your gender on your identification, and if you don't match that, a lot of people deal with harassment, or if somebody thinks they're in the wrong restroom, they might ask them to leave. So that can be really uncomfortable, or sometimes if somebody passes as, for example, male, but their ID says female, and they try to use the men's restroom, if they get caught, they could deal with both social and legal repercussions.
Bathroom selection is not the only issue trans students face. Housing, roll call, and even filling out university forms are among the daily concerns for these individuals.
I'm ashamed of Purdue University for using the words sex and gender interchangeably when indeed they are not, and asking students to categorize themselves by one or the other, when in the case of gender there are numerous genders, almost an infinite number of them, and to be forced to dichotomize yourself, I think is unconscionable.
For those that do not know, there are many outlets of support here at Purdue University for LGBTQ students.
The LGBTQ Center on campus is just a phenomenal resource because they, for example, offer financial overrides if the student gets disowned financially from their family. They offer a lot of supportive resources. It's a fantastic community space. There's always students in there to talk to who probably have a similar situation.
Visit the Purdue LGBTQ website for more information on the center, upcoming events, as well as available resources. Reporting for Fast Track, I'm Mackenzie Carney.
Coming up, we'll talk about health and find out what researchers have been up to pertaining to the topic.
We'll be back right after this.
I am poised under pressure. I led Purdue to a come-from-behind victory in my first start. I am focused on the field and in class. I draw inspiration from the cradle of quarterbacks. I am Rob Henry, and I am a Boilermaker.
Welcome back to Fast Track. During the winter months, many students have to miss class due to illness, and certain viruses are more common during the cold months, especially on a college campus. Some of the more popular behaviors among college students are actually detrimental to the immune system. Reporter Erica Seifert takes us in for a closer look.
With the harsh winter we are having this year, it may seem that everyone is getting sick. Even though it is a myth that common colds and flus are caused by low temperatures, there are some illnesses that become more prevalent during the winter months.
So I see a lot more upper respiratory tract infections. I see a lot more middle ear disease, just because their eustachian tubes aren't working very well, their sinuses aren't working very well. They tend to have more difficulties with recurrent sinusitis.
With so many people on a college campus, it can be difficult to avoid getting sick, even while making healthy choices. But some students are engaging in behaviors that may be more harmful than they realize. Many students sleep in shared cold air rooms in the fraternities and sororities across campus. There are health risks associated with sleeping near so many people.
namely things like colds, and especially this year, influenza, which when contracted can affect even young people dramatically, leading to hospitalization and potentially even more problems.
Many students enjoy sleeping in cold air rooms because of the low temperatures, but during the winter, these conditions can be dangerous to your health.
Obviously, hypothermia is always an issue when the temperatures are below zero, and I think that in a very cold setting, that would be a risk.
Cold air rooms are not the only threat to students' health. In order to help them feel warmer, many students will consume alcohol before braving the cold.
Actually, when you drink alcohol, it dilates the peripheral blood vessels, and so when that happens, your skin will feel warmer. So the common misconception is that when you're drinking, you're actually warmer. In fact, you're losing a lot of body heat this way, and so your core and your organs are actually getting colder. So in that thought, you would see that you may be actually colder as a result of drinking, leading to potentially hypothermia if you were to be overexposed to the cold.
Hypothermia is a serious medical condition that often requires hospitalization. When consuming alcohol, it is important for students to wear layers to help prevent this illness.
Well, you're just more susceptible. You're lowering your resistance if you're not dressing appropriately for the winter.
There are simple things students can do to help boost their immune system during the winter. Doctors suggest taking a multivitamin and washing hats and gloves regularly, as well as staying hydrated.
I think the big thing is to make sure, and sounds very corny, but make sure you're drinking plenty of fluids.
For any further questions, you can contact the Purdue University Student Health Center. Reporting for Fast Track, I'm Erica Seifert.
Researchers here at Purdue University have been working with the virus EV71, which is common in children living in Malaysia. These researchers may have found a way to counteract this virus. Alexander Johnson has the details.
In order to prevent an infection, you have to find a way of tickling the immune system to produce the antibody itself when infected. So the body knows, I've got this virus, I've just been infected, now I have to go and produce a lot of antibodies to counter my infection.
Michael Rossman and Richard Kuhn are two scientists here at Purdue University researching EV71, and they may have just found an antibody to cure the virus.
So EV71 causes a disease that's called hand and foot disease, in which you have blisters, and it's usually small children who get this. The funny thing is that there's two viruses that cause a very similar type disease, and they cannot be readily distinguished by just looking at the symptoms themselves.
One of these viruses is curable, whereas EV71 can enter the central nervous system and cause severe neurological problems and even death. For the past 4 years, a team of researchers have been studying the structure of the virus and growing the virus cells under controlled conditions to understand what it looks like and how it works.
I like to open the hood under the hood of the virus and see what's inside and see how it works and relate it to the actual function of what kind of cells the virus infects, how it gets into the cell, how it reproduces itself in a cell, how it assembles to make new and more viruses, how it gets out of the infected cell, and how it infects the next person.
They can analyze the virus EV71 by using an X-ray closography, which is a tool that turns the virus into crystals like table salt or sugar. The crystals can then be put under a very intense X-ray beam where the structure of the virus shows up as millions of little spots. The researchers collect and evaluate these spots in order to understand how the virus operates.
We have found the structure of the virus in 3 dimensions, the arrangement of atoms. Of course, we now have to interpret what that means, what these atoms tell us. That structure then does tell us something about how the virus works.
Once the researchers understand the structure and function of the virus, they can then begin to create a solution and figure out how to prevent the virus from functioning.
So we found some new mechanisms by which an antibody can bind to the virus and render it inactive. We call it neutralization.
If people can could produce such antibodies in their body, then they would be immune to the virus. So the question is then, how can we challenge a person's immune system to produce antibodies of this kind?
The researchers are hopeful that the antibodies that have been found to neutralize EV71 will help to control the virus and develop into a vaccine, as well as an antiviral prevention of the virus.
Hopefully it means that the virus is going to be controlled in the next few years. There's still a lot more that has to be done to really understand all of the detailed mechanisms about this, but certainly the objective on all of this stuff is to figure out how does the virus work and how can we interrupt that process and how can we do it in the most effective way.
Reporting for Fast Track, I'm Alexandra Johnson. Up next on Fast Track, we'll cover a few more stories on the cold weather and how people in the community are dealing with its effects.
We'll be right back.
We are all Boilermakers, but we're also much more. We're history makers, exploring the farthest reaches of our universe, often when strapped to a rocket. We are hope makers, rebuilders of Haitian cityscapes who ensure they'll now withstand any disaster. We are difference makers, developers of drought-resistant crops that just might end world hunger. The fact is, what we make moves the world forward. We are Purdue, makers all.
People in the Midwest are used to extreme winter conditions, and for some Purdue students, it has had an effect on their living situations. Jackson Brunner has more on the story.
For residents of Indiana, the winter always carries a potential for damaging effects. As students at Purdue enjoyed winter break away from campus, their on-campus homes stood in the path of what was called a polar vortex. An average temperature of 22.1 degrees and wind chills as low as -15 would prove catastrophic for on and off campus residents of the West Lafayette community. Apartment complex Copper Beach, located several miles away from the Purdue campus on Klondike Road, dealt with pipes bursting and, as a result, noticeable damage in the homes of tenants.
There were instances where the pipes froze in the kitchen, which caused the floor of the kitchen, which would be the ceiling of the lower levels, to fall. So that would be people's bedrooms that the ceilings fell in their bedrooms.
Even though drywall damage has been quickly repaired as company management responded, Copper Beach tries to be as clear with residents of their apartments as they can from the beginning.
When tenants sign their lease, which is normally in the springtime of the previous year, it is stated in the lease that their heat should not go below 55 degrees in the wintertime. And we try to make them understand that when they sign their lease. Also, before Christmas break, there are newsletters with tips on leaving your cabinets open and your sinks dripping a little bit so your pipes don't freeze, and also keeping your heat on. So we try to inform everyone before they leave and before it gets really cold out what to do.
Some people a little closer to the West Lafayette campus weren't quite as lucky in terms of warning. The Brothers of Fraternity House Alpha Sigma Phi said they left the heat on while out for break, but still ended up with damage to clean up.
A lot of the water damage happened in our formal room, which is a room we set up. We have nice furniture in there. We take really good care of it. We make sure it's always clean. And over break, we got about 1.5 feet of water in that room. And we had to replace all of our heating units and blowers in that room. It took about 3 weeks after school started to get all that done. Our second floor room also had some water damage. We had 5 or 6 individual persons' rooms get water damage, and they were without heat for the same amount of time as the formal room.
The main levels weren't the only areas damaged. According to the brothers, a secret room in which history of the house is kept had important documents destroyed that contained the history of their fraternity. Upon returning, that damage was something they would live with before repairs were finished.
Yeah, when we all came to the house on Sunday, you could still kind of smell the musty smell. The carpet was still kind of wet. The furniture was still a little wet. We had fans everywhere just trying to blow out, get it as dry as possible.
In a long winter, the Purdue community will have to band together to deal with this continuing winter storm problem. It will likely not be until March or April when pipes and a normal way of living can be fully repaired. For Fast Track, I'm Jackson Brunner.
While many of us enjoyed the brief warm-up last week, some residents had to pay the consequences for the melting snow and ice. Gino Recchia went out to northern Lafayette, where numerous residents are dealing with flooding.
In the midst of a warm-up that we've experienced here in Lafayette, low-lying communities have been forced to evacuate due to river flooding. I'm standing here in front of Wildcat Creek, where ice jams have caused the river to overflow, causing residents to evacuate their homes. Residents of the Barton Beach neighborhood located north of Lafayette watch in disbelief the worst flooding event they have ever dealt with.
Nothing like this, nothing like the ice dam. We've been through a couple of floods where the water got almost this high, but this here was a flash flood that came in the middle of the night, about 1 o'clock in the morning. And the creek risen, up to this height in just a matter of a half an hour. We didn't have time to do anything as far as getting any vehicles out or anything like that, so we're pretty much everything underwater back there.
As warmer temperatures moved into our area, chunks of ice flowing downstream became blocked by the creek's curved structure, which resulted in a flash flood.
The water came up at 1 o'clock in the morning, and that people were rescued by airboats. And we have a friend that lives right down over there, and he was rescued also.
The creek hadn't risen. It hadn't risen from, 8-10 hours after the rain, but there was some water running over top of the ice. And this must have been, I'm thinking, maybe dammed up upstream somewhere and broke loose and then re-dammed down here and created the flash flood.
With colder temperatures in our forecast, it may be a while before these residents are able to return to their homes and begin the cleanup process. Reporting for Fast Track, I'm Gino Recchia.
The Purdue Surplus Store is one way for both the university and students to save some money. The store sells a variety of items such as furniture, electronics, and bicycles, all at heavily discounted prices. Reporter Lauren Westberg visited the warehouse to find out more.
One of Purdue's best-kept secrets, tucked away just on the other side of the river, is helping Purdue's departments decrease cost and provide affordable retail for the community. The Purdue Surplus Store works to reuse, recycle, and resell unneeded items from both the main and outlying campuses.
Campus is a small city, basically, and we receive everything that a small city is going to have, right up into the police department, the fire department. We've sold fire trucks, we sold rescue equipment, ambulances. We recently sold, last year, 2 years ago, I guess, we sold the fleet of airplanes.
Departments can save not only by buying gently used pieces of equipment and furniture at heavily discounted prices, but also from downstream revenue. A portion of the sales for merchandise will be returned to the department. Items sold at the store tend to be purchased with relative speed. However, it all depends on what is being sold.
It really depends on what it is. If it's a specialty item, it may stay around for several weeks. There are some unique items that we will have people come in every single day. They'll be waiting out at the door when we open to see what we got in new, and those items may last 5 minutes.
The tightly packed warehouse boasts an eclectic mix of items, from standard furniture and classroom electronics to even selling smart cars and other vehicles. There are old records and t-shirts and even a section filled with the forgotten bicycles of Purdue's campus. However, there are certainly some items that are stranger than others.
And we have an unusual item next door right now. SimMan, what it is, it's a actual functioning teaching device used in nursing. And it has a compressor that hooks up, and it's got a computer that hooks up. He breathes, you can take his temperature, his eyes open and close, his mouth opens and closes. That is a strange piece of merchandise.
One of the unique aspects of the surplus store is how it handles electronics, in a way most other universities have not adopted yet.
We completely recycle a desktop computer. Every piece of it is recycled, even the plastic.
By selling each piece individually, the store has created an annual revenue of $100,000 to $200,000 per year, and that's just from the electronic recycling efforts alone.
We employ 3 student workers, and they tear down computers, and they actually have it down to a fairly good science where they can disassemble a computer in about 60 seconds, and all of those parts go to different outlets for recycling.
Store employees are kept busy by the daily truckloads, sometimes up to 6 times in one day. The surplus store has recently downsized their space and storage area in order to become more cost-effective, thereby increasing efforts to quickly sell the merchandise. While there is a steady customer base from the local community, the store is trying to reach out to more Purdue staff and students, especially through their Facebook page.
I will find an item that is posted on our university surplus site, one of the sister sites, as a reuse idea. Sometimes they'll take an old dresser and make it into a entertainment center or a dog bed or things like that, and I'll post those just as reuse ideas.
The surplus store is located on 3601 Sagamore Parkway in West Lafayette and is open from noon to 4, Monday through Friday. Reporting for Fast Track, I'm Lauren Westberg.
That's all the time we have on this week's edition of Fast Track. Thanks for watching. I'm John Rawlings.
And I'm Alexandra Johnson. Join us again next week.